Throughout much of the 19th century, the West was somewhat lawless. There were many gangs and outlaws. Occasionally, a few became famous names through dime novels sold back east. There were towns well known for being on the wild side: Deadwood, Tombstone, etc. There often was a touch of gallows humor. This headstone is in the Tombstone Boot Hill. Here lies Lester Moore. 4 slugs from a 44. No less, no more. Over all the years watching Western movies, I would hear reference to Quantrill's Raiders. Will Money in Unforgiven had, quote, ridden with Quantrill. Yet I never really knew what they were other than really bad. So, here is Quantrill's Raiders. William Quantrill was pro-Confederate. His focus was on the border states of Kansas and Missouri. His indiscriminate looting, burning, and killing were so bad, the Confederacy withdrew all support of his rampaging tactics. His reputation was built upon the total destruction of Lawrence, Kansas, butchering 150 men on August 21, 1863. Historians view Quantrill's raids as a pure act of plunder and revenge. William Quantrill eventually died in 1865 with very few of his original loyal followers. Among them were Frank and Jesse James. Jesse James, outlaw, bank and train robber, had strong ties to the South and supposedly sought revenge for the way Southerners were treated after the Civil War. His rampaging lasted 16 years until, as the song says, that dirty little coward, Robert Ford, shot him in the back. The first woke gang, known as the Rufus Buck Gang, all teenagers, Anglo, Native American, and African American. They were short-lived. They began robbing and killing in 1895, and they were caught and hanged in 1896. Definitely an equal opportunity organization. Belle Starr fancied herself as the Queen Bandit, palled around with Jesse James and the Younger brothers. She was shot and killed in 1889, and the case is unsolved to this day. I wonder, really, how hard did the law try? John Wesley Hardin, gunfighter, claimed to have killed 42 men, notorious for a bad temper. After a long night of gambling and drinking, he retired to his hotel room. The person in the next room was snoring so loud, Hardin couldn't sleep. He shot several times through the wall, killing him, and went to sleep. He ain't no Paul Newman, but he is the real Butch Cassidy, who did rob trains and banks. Movies make you famous, particularly with a cast like this. Robert Leroy Parker and Harry Longabaugh became Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Butch formed the Hole in the Wall Gang, and from 1896 to 1901, the gang was the most prolific bank and train robbers in the West. This photo was taken in 1899, shortly after the gang had robbed a bank in Casey, Wyoming. Sundance is on the left and Butch on the right. By 1901, Pinkertons were closing in on them, and they decided to move to South America and do a little ranching, but continued their robbing ways until cornered in Bolivia in 1908. Many rumors continue to circulate whether they were killed or not. Well, whatever did happen, the robberies did stop. The wild part of the Wild West was a major contributor to its appeal. Scenes like this supposedly happened on a regular basis. Holding the shotgun is the notorious train, bank, and stagecoach outlaw, Big Nose George. born with a monstrous curved nose. His last name, ironically, was Parrott. Finally arrested, tried, and convicted for murder, and sentenced to hang in the town of Rawlins, Wyoming. The townspeople formed a lynch mob, and the first effort to hang him failed. The rope was too long. The second effort succeeded in slowly choking him to death, but the noose was incorrectly placed, and it tore off both his ears. The town doc, Dr. Osborne, took possession of the earless body to examine his brain, sawed off the top of his skull, and used it for an ashtray. In a stroke of genius, he stripped the skin off his chest, back, and thighs, and sent it to a tanner, and had a pair of shoes made from it. The shoes were displayed in the town bank window until, in 1893, Doc Osborne was elected governor of Wyoming and proudly wore the shoes to his inaugural ball. Apparently two-toned, they were way ahead of fashion trends. This is not your local bank teller, although he looks like it. During the Civil War, Cole Younger was a guerrilla fighter and a bushwhacker, and later the other half of the James Younger gang. They robbed and pillaged until finally caught in 1876. He went to trial, and the sometimes mysterious law of the West did not hang him. Instead, he was released on parole. As Hollywoodish as the name Johnny Ringo sounds, he was real, but he was known as a backshooter, not a real gunfighter. Bloody Bill Anderson was another Southerner in the Civil War who was a leading member of Quantrill's Raiders. After the Union Army killed both his sisters, he engineered a massacre of 23 off-duty Union soldiers. He was then chased by 125 Union soldiers into an ambush and had all of them killed. This is not your school marm or Sunday school teacher. This is Pearl Hart, who attempted the last of the stagecoach holdups in 1899 and was caught. She was tried and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Due to unusual circumstances, she was released in 2 years. She was pregnant. Now, how does that happen in prison? Born in 1859 in the slums of New York, who used 3 names: Henry McCarty, William H. Bonney, Billy the Kid. The most celebrated was Billy the Kid. Orphaned at 14 years old, his first offense was stealing laundry from a line. He soon carved a trail of death, killing 21 men, and died himself at 21 years old. More portrayals of Billy have occurred than any other bad man of the West, with hundreds of dime novels, books, motion pictures, radio, and TV shows, even a song by Billy Joel, a libretto composed by Aaron Copland, and a concert conducted by Leonard Bernstein. One movie about Billy featured more Jane Russell cleavage than Billy, and was dubbed the first sex western. He's been portrayed by Audie Murphy, Roy Rogers, Paul Newman, Chris Christopherson, Val Kilmer, and many, many more actors. Versions of his story have appeared in Book of the Month clubs. In 1877, Billy wandered into Lincoln County, New Mexico, a dreary, barren territory, with his band of regulators, as they were called. He was involved in the Lincoln County Wars. Although they lasted a few years, they were vicious and a lot of killing on both sides. Eventually arrested for murder, Billy's audacious escape from jail itself rivals all other jailbreaks. The newly elected sheriff, Pat Garrett, relentlessly chased Billy until finally cornering him. The circumstances around Garrett's shooting of Billy are unclear. Was he armed? Did he resist? Was he shot in the back, etc.? There were essentially 2 Billy the Kids, a tough little thug, thief, murderer, and a romantic, sentimental hero, brave and leader of an outnumbered band fighting for justice. Well, whichever extreme one takes, Billy the Kid remains an icon of pop American culture, and the skinny, buck-toothed kid from New York City occupies the top spot in Western outlaw folklore. Although often portrayed as lawless, bad guys did get caught and punished. This is the Dalton Gang. Often overlooked in the story of the West is the vital importance of the buffalo, the horse, and the mule. They are being given their own episode, number 9,